Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health? Hi everyone, Dr. Adriana Popescu today with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. Today I'm so excited to have with me as my guest, Ms. Julie Oreson Perkins, also known as Julie O. Julie is a coach, a teacher, a motivational speaker, a radio show host, an international best-selling author, energy work and healer, breast cancer thriver, I want to hear more about that, and shamanic practitioner. These conversations result in a rebirth of natural intuitive abilities and zest for life on planet Earth here and now, plus a greater connection between mind, body, and soul. She's a certified life coach with a professional certified coach credential from the International Coach Federation, with specialties in energy leadership and life transitions. As an access consciousness practitioner, Julie is known for her highly intuitive and dynamic energetic capacities to work with clients' bodies. Wow, that's amazing. Julie, welcome to the show today.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's great to see you again, always.
Yes, I'm so grateful to have you. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this work. What drew you to it?
Well, if I were being honest, I would say that I fell into it. So as I'm motoring along on my path in life and doing the work and career and doing the raising a family and kind of blinders on and barreling down that highway at 1,000,000 miles an hour and not being very present and mindful of my body, I got taken out. So I had a breast cancer diagnosis with 2 very young children at home, and it was a huge wake-up call. I just couldn't believe what was happening. It was one of those things where all the stress just kind of came knotting up together and clumping up together in this tumor, and I just couldn't believe it was happening. I finally thought I was getting somewhere, and then this happened. So I actually was one of those people who was always interested in alternative modalities. The main reason being is that I was not able to take a lot of medications very well. So I would take the non-drowsy medicine and then crash out for 3 hours. So I was always looking for something different. And at the time of my diagnosis, my husband was a Reiki master and doing some Hawaiian shamanism. So that was my first introduction to the work. And I gotta say, it was truly pivotal because it showed me what else was really possible with something outside of the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about shamanism. What exactly is that?
So shamanism is the world's oldest spiritual healing modality. It's cross-cultural. There are many different blends of it. It dates back about 40,000 years. And because it's a spiritual modality, it looks at all illness and all dis-ease as through a spiritual lens. And it looks to find out where there's a dissonance or disconnect in that realm and how it can be mended there and how it can trickle down and benefit the emotional and the physical and the mental areas as well as the spiritual. So the cool thing about shamanism is that it's nature-based, and so anybody that's cool for me. I just really adore having beautiful nature spaces and having a connection with the trees and the plants and the animals and all the little creatures that are anywhere on the planet. And so really the connection that you can have there, which is no judgment and total unconditional presence with anything, is what I know that can shift things. So shamanism also uses spirit guides. So you might hear power animals, spirit guides. So there's the shaman will cross the veil into the other worlds, as they say, through a journey like trance. So there'll be people call shamanic journeying. They use drums or rattles to get into that trance-like state, to go over to get the information that's needed for the healing or get the medicine, and then bring it back over to be able to affect the healing. So they will journey, and they've actually done studies where they've had those little nodes on people's brains to map the brain waves of somebody's going into a shamanic state, and the hertz of their trance-like state when they're journeying matches the hertz of the earth. So they're actually going into that level of communion with the earth and getting what is required there and then bringing it back for healing. So I've seen all kinds of things healed that way through shamanic, and without the use of even medications or even any psychotropic drugs or things like that, because I know sometimes that has been used in this field, and it's not always necessary, in my opinion. So it's yeah, really very effective.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear about things you've discovered with shamanic journeys you've had. But I first want to come back to your story, because, you know, as some of the viewers and listeners might know, I too have a similar story of illness and having come through that on the other side. And when I actually was privileged enough to have a class in shamanic studies in graduate school, you know, we talked about the healing crisis, that sometimes the shaman's journey often involves some sort of illness or dis-ease of some sort. And it's funny to keep coming across in all the people I interview, it seems like there is that we went through it ourselves. What does shamanism say about that?
Well, shamanism says that actually it's it's initiatory. It's the birth of a healer. So there's one shaman, African shaman, that I really like, Dr. Malidoma Some, okay? And he talks about two obviously incompatible energies have merged into the same field, and it's creating that dissonance, or it can create a tear in your reality. And that's where you need to go in and do the work and become the healer. He talks about the birth of the healer that this crisis is, and you become the healer, and on that journey you learn how to do that and what that's all about, so then you can lead others through that process. And that's where the term wounded healer comes from. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you've been through that journey and you can do it for others. And so cross-culturally, so this is just, you know, one quote that I gave from a West African shaman, but cross-culturally, you'll see the same kinds of things coming across. So in the Tibetan Buddhism shamans, or the Peruvian shamans, or the Native American shamans. So all different ones, the Norse shamans, they all have a similar theme, that's what happens, that's where the work is being done. And that's where the treasure is. So somebody described it to me once as like, when the wave of change is coming to you and it's swelling and it's crashing on the beach, and you're like, oh, I was just building all these sand castles, and, you know, and all this stuff that I had going on in the world and in my life, and now it's leveled out, but what is left can be the treasure. So when that structure is blown away, it can be those gems and jewels left there on the beach, and that can be what you can leverage into the new phase of your life.
Yeah, beautiful. And actually, I love that you quoted Dr. Malindroma. Hope I'm not butchering his name, because he wrote a really cool article called "What a Shaman Sees in a Mental Institution," right?
Exactly.
Tell us more about, the shamanic perspective on mental illness. It's not what Western psychiatry is saying.
Not at all. And so in that article, he was actually talking about his kind of shock at how because to his culture and to his perspective and the cosmology of healing that he has, is that, again, this is the initiation and the birth of a healer. And once that opens up, then the community needs to rally around and support this individual and give them either the teachings they need, the learnings that they need, the space to do whatever it is, whether it's, you know, jump up and down or scream and cry or have an episode of any sort, and then to work through that, to feel their feelings, to emote, to have physical manifestations of illnesses and things like that, and to work that through, and then give them, again, the techniques, the tools, the guidance through the guides, you know, connect them with the guides, journey with them, set them up with power animals, things like that. And so he was shocked to see that this was not embraced and rallied by the community. And so what I really love about what he did was he actually took somebody who was in this state in a mental hospital and took this individual back to Africa and put him in this culture and gave him the space and the support required to do that. And this individual became a healer. So these people who are having from the shamanic point of view, you'll see a lot of people who have been called sensitive, energetically sensitive. People are super aware, super psychic. All of those labels are having these challenges, especially now when everything is heightened and everybody is thinking about things in a completely different way. And there's a lot of different levels of emotions that we don't normally see. There's normally this kind of undercurrent of adrenaline. You know, we never quite get relaxed a lot of times. A lot of us do, and a lot of us still don't. And so that kind of undercurrent is kind of even at an elevated level right now. And so it's causing people to force them into a breaking point. And this could be, again, another opportunity for everybody if we were looking at it that way. If we were looking at it instead of a diagnosis of what's wrong, if we were looking at it as a possibility or an opportunity, that's where the really creative work can be done, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. And that's why I love the shamanic view so much, is because it isn't looking at mental illness as an illness. It's someone who's having let's say a psychotic break or a nervous breakdown or a meltdown of some sort. You know, in this culture, in the Western psychiatric medical model, we see that as a crisis, as a pathology, as something that needs to be medicated, and this is such a different way of seeing that. We're seeing this as a gift. You know, like, oh, how fortunate of you to have been, you know, like in that article, he talks about like the gods chose you to be a healer. What a gift. And let's celebrate that. And let's get you, yes, that support you need and that training that you need. There's a similar story with a woman in this documentary called Crazy Wise, which I highly recommend to people, that talks about, you know, follows a few different people through the Western, you know, psychiatric institutions and all that. And one of these ladies discovered that her psychotic break, her hearing of voices, it wasn't hallucinations. She actually was hearing the spirits talking with her, and they were calling her to do healing work. And she also found an African shaman or healer to work with. She got training, and her symptoms went away because they were actually capacities that she had that were mislabeled as problems when in fact they were gifts.
Exactly. And that's why I so love that they call it dis-ease. You're not at ease, it's uncomfortable, and that's part of the process. That's actually, you know, and if you can keep it there, and that's what's really important if you're doing shamanic work, is to not go to the diagnosis, because the people will come to you and say, I was diagnosed as bipolar, you know, and here's what's going on. And they'll want to start from there. It's really important to go into the spirit realm and to really ask, you know, what would contribute here? What's going on here? And what's the medicine that's required, to keep that energy and that connection open.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about then how you as a coach and as a shamanic healer, how have you worked with clients who have received some of these mental health diagnoses, bipolar, psychotic, depressed, anxious? What have you noticed?
Well, so I would say that the number one thing that I noticed that any kind of mental illness that comes in, it kind of boils down to, and in shamanic healings, they'll tell you this too, is that there's some kind of loss of power. So that they feel like they're not their own selves. They feel like they're not in control of their life. They feel like they may be being attacked by someone or something. They feel like they can't create anything in their lives, like their income or their money flows are being impacted and things like that. So the number one thing about power loss is to get them in a place where they have the sense of themselves and the sense of their powerful selves. Okay, so that's the first thing that we do, is we talk about that. And so you can I teach them how to journey. And we go on a journey to get them a power animal. It's kind of like a companion. And as we go through the process, they will start to realize that as we are all connected in the whole collective consciousness, that these things, these energies, this power as it shows up like a power animal is not separate from us. It's part of the collective. It's an aspect of us. And so but the baby step is get the power animal. Journey always with the power animal. You have the buddy that can be your advisor and that can afford you the strength and the courage or the power or the protection that you need as you're walking along the path. And then that evolves into the space where that's actually really neat. That's really who I am as a spiritual being. And that's what it can do there. So that's really the first thing that we do is, get them out of the mindset that they're powerless and get them some tools to work with so they can feel more power filled. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then the second thing that I often see is that people have a hard time maintaining that. So whatever crisis they're in, they're kind of oh, thank God that's over, right? And it's like, oh yeah, okay, power animal, thanks, see ya. And they don't really make it a practice of maintaining that. So we talk about energy management, how to manage your energy, and how to make sure that if you are not sourcing from you, because a lot of people end up feeling really fatigued and really tired and mentally fuzzy all the time, especially if they're choosing some medications and things like that. And then I have kids and they always need something from me and I'm so tired, and so we talk about your source of energy. And so in shamanism, it's great. You have a source of energy, the planet and nature and all the creatures, and that have infinite access to infinite energy. So we talk about that energy management, where the source of your energy is. And we also talk as part of that is maintaining your sovereignty. So, maintaining energetic, your spiritual hygiene and sovereignty. So I'm a sovereign being, with a right to my own light and space. And so because of that, and we can say, have ceremonies and say prayers and have ritual around that so that you can maintain that spiritual hygiene. And so we develop that practice and do that. Okay. So the third thing that can be done is to, if you develop those, then this third thing that will happen less and less. But what I often see in cases of mental illness is what we call what they call classic possession, which is natural and normal for people who are healers or are sensitives and are having communications with disembodied spirits. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to say, is that it's normal. And there's a shamanic technique called a depossession. And so I practice compassionate depossession, in which, again, it teaches you how to actually discern what's you, what's not you. And if you're a healer, then it's highly likely that these beings are coming to you because you can facilitate them. And so then we teach what we call psychopomp work, which is leader of souls, and which you teach the healer then how to psychopomp the beings over, to cross them over, so that they're still not here, or how to finish their business so that they easily can go about their way. So that has been a beautiful journey for anybody who really wants to embrace that. Although there's a lot of taboo around that, right? As soon as you say possession, people start thinking horror movies and, you know, heads turning and things to be afraid of and fang things, and, you know, and that's not at all what it is. It's misplaced energy and beings that don't know where they are and that are really coming to you for help. And so if you are hearing the voices and seeing the silhouettes of beings, they're probably here because you can facilitate them. So, you know, an aspect of that is, again, acknowledging your capacity, going through the process of initiation, stepping into the healer that you truly are, and working with that. It's every single time that I felt like I was having a dark night of the soul or a break of some sort, without fail, it helped to do work. And so when somebody would call and say, can I have a session? I'd be like, oh God, I'm too messed up today. Yes, the answer should have always been yes. It took me a little while to realize that. And once it did, good for me, good for them, good for the planet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much in what you said I want to ask you questions about. Yeah. One of the things that I know comes up in shamanic work can be this idea of soul loss or soul fragmentation, and the soul retrieval process can often be an important one to look at. Tell us more about that. How does that happen? How do you heal that?
Yeah, and so that can happen in a lot of different ways. The most obvious and easiest ones are through some kind of trauma. So you'll hear the people that will say, oh my gosh, you know, ever since the car accident, I never quite felt like myself. You know, and so when we talk about soul loss, we're talking about pieces of their essence. So in a lot of different religious cosmologies, there's the soul, a thing. And so in shamanism, we have soul loss as pieces of your essence, that are the pieces of your being that jumped out. Okay, so part of what can happen with that is that the soul will see that the body is being impacted somehow, whether it's physical trauma or emotional abuse or something like that, and it just sort of step aside. Okay, and if it doesn't come back, then that's when they don't feel like complete. Compounding over the years, that can get that kind of tired feeling. I can't quite get it together. And if you're a healer, and we can talk about this another time, but if you've been a healer through your ancestral lineage, and if your soul has incarnated as a healer over generations, you can cumulatively have soul loss. Okay, so the way to do that is we do soul retrieval, and it's a process and a ceremony in which you call back the piece and you integrate it, and through some time in nature is what I always recommend, to have that integration time and to heal, and also to have some support with that. Let people know that you're doing this. Okay, so a lot of times that's what we don't get in modern day shamanism, is the community support. Like, all of this was done in villages and everybody knew what was going on. They didn't say, oh, crazy Julie lost her stuff again and they gotta go get a piece of her back. No, they're just like, oh, okay, we need to rally around and hold the space and hold this container for that. So does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
Yeah. And I would say, actually, you know, when what you're calling soul loss is what I think we in Western psychobabble might call dissociation.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's kind of like, I used to have this vacuum cleaner that whenever I would plug it in the plug, and if I would pull it too far, it would sort of just like, you know, it would sort of short out and I'd kind of put it back in, I kind of set it right, but it was just never really seated right. And that's what kind of soul loss feels like to me. You're kind of going along, you're doing fine, and then you just sort of zip out for a little bit and you just can't quite get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's what's really important in that is to really claim it too. So that's the other thing about it. It's not me doing this for you. It's all done through spirit. I'm facilitating it, but you are actually receiving it. You have to say, yes, I'm going to claim this back. I am going to receive this. I am choosing this. And that's when it really works.
Yeah. And I love the empowerment piece of that. I mean, so much of my work is just really, I'm an empowerment coach, you know, I mean, it's all about like looking at ways in which we've given our power away and what that does to us. That I think that often results in what we're calling mental health symptoms, you know, depression, anxiety. Why? Because you're operating on less than all your cylinders. You scattered parts and pieces of yourself all over the place. And yes, you need to pull that back in and reintegrate that in order to have more of a sense of wholeness. And the other thing that I love too about the shamanic work is that you are working with people's ancestry, and you might even be working with other lifetimes, right? Like the trauma may not even have occurred in this lifetime. It could be some other time, place, dimension, something, right? It's pretty broad.
It's totally broad. And if people are willing to look at that, and that's I think the biggest hurdle that people have. It's like, what? My grandmother's grandmother, you know, and what are we talking about? No, my body hurts right here, right now, and I can't focus on my work, and I'm really sad all the time. Like, just do that, you know, when, like you said, the view is actually this big versus this little.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, you know, depression from a shamanic point of view is like actually a suppression of their spirit and a suppression of their power, which can be attributed to soul loss or power loss, you know. So, and that can happen in so many ways. I'm seeing actually a lot of young people, like high school, college age kids who are so super intuitive. A lot of those kids are growing up really in this way, and they don't know how to deal with this. And the parents don't know how to deal with this either, because they've got the one way that they've always done it, whatever that one way is. And so that's why I'm really so grateful that you're giving this kaleidoscope of possibilities. There can be more than one thing, and whatever flips your switch, right? If you want to talk about indigenous shamanic healing or shamanic healing, and come sit and rattle with us, or you know, have a journey and go on a journey, that's great. Or if you want to try something different, just know that there's different possibilities out there.
Right.
Yeah.
What might a typical journey look like?
So typical journeys, I usually always take clients to their healing garden. So we establish a place where they may have gone to before in nature, or it's something that they can imagine. And we travel with their power animals and my power animals. We go into the drumming trance, relax. You are not leaving your body, which is different, you know, that like astral projection. It's more like lucid dreaming. You're present, you're not asleep, but you're not fully awake either. And you go into a place where you can call your healing garden. Okay. And so that's a daily ritual I like to recommend, is that they go to their healing garden and they can clean it up. They can add things to it. Sometimes you'll arrive in your healing garden, you'll find, oh my gosh, I got a waterfall now in my healing garden. And it's a place to rejuvenate, restore, reconnect, rekindle that relationship with nature and with spirit, so that you can get what it is that's required for you to heal. And so, like, a lot of people do meditation or yoga or Tai Chi as a daily practice. Journeying to your healing garden can be a wonderful, wonderful healing practice.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. And you know what you were saying before about the brainwaves, actually the science tells us that when people, and it can be the rhythmic beat of a drum, but people do enter like this altered state of consciousness, the brainwaves slow down, right? You and I are talking, we're kind of in like beta, I think it is.
Yeah.
You get down to theta. right? Which is that deep meditative or even the state of hypnosis. And when we do, you and I also do some hands-on energy work where it's a similar thing. The person's brain waves will slow down. And in those states, you are more open, you are more receptive, your logical thinking mind, you know, kind of gets a little bit more out of the way, and you're open to receiving more information, including your own wisdom, your own knowing.
Right. And that's where the healing occurs. You know, that's really when you are out of your mind. You know, so I recently, in the last 6 months, was in a car accident and I had a concussion, and I could not form thoughts. And it was actually one of the most blissful times because I couldn't do it if I wanted to. So while it was a little challenging for my family, it was also that realization that, yeah, that's really where I do get hung up. And that's really where I do get stuck, is relying on that. The mind is a beautiful thing. It has great uses for certain things. And for other things, it's not so good at it. So for what reason, why am I putting that into all the jobs of my life? I don't know. But again, still a learning process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, still a learning process.
And I love that shamanism is cross-cultural. I mean, it's been practiced around the world, like you said, for like tens of thousands of years. And sometimes I look at Western medicine, like how arrogant are you? You think that this technology that's been around for, I don't know, 100, 150 years is superior somehow to what indigenous people have known and practiced for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, it's interesting to see when some of the shamans that I've met, and native shamans, and the people will tell their stories and they'll just be very patient and very quiet, but you can almost see them sort of scratching their head like, what? You know, like they almost are tempted by wanting to say, I don't get that, you know, but they know better because they just know that it works. They trust the process. They know that it's been around. And as one of my shamanic teachers says, because there was a time when a lot of the shamanic practitioners were going around and making the circuit and trying to get connected with medical doctors and kind of prove their worth, you know, like, let me show you how this works. Come on, just give me a chance. Let me show you. And then one of my shamanic teachers was at a conference, and somebody stood up with speakers and said, we have to keep trusting the process and do what we know works, and stop begging and looking for the validation of this reality and the Western medicine. And it's okay if that's what they want to choose, but we know this works. So we've got to stop. We got to keep doing the work, and then just keep moving this forward, and then see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So do you have any suggestions for people to whom this might be like really new information, if they want to educate themselves, if they want to find out more about the history of shamanism, or like, are there any books, resources, anything you would suggest?
Yeah, there's a great podcast by Christina Pratt. It's called Why Shamanism Now? So she wrote the Encyclopedia of Shamanism as well. So she's got a lot of background and stuff in there. There's also some great shamanic programs on the Shift Network. So the Shift Network has all kinds of different modalities and things. So there's some great shamanic information on there. If you're particularly interested in compassionate depossession, you can go to Betsy Bergstrom's website, betsybergstrom.com, and she's a healer in Seattle, and so she's got some great information there. And then I think one of the last things that I would say is that shamanism is what they call a direct revelation practice. So I'm merely a facilitator for you. I'm not giving you answers. I'm facilitating, and they actually call shamans as the hollow bone. You know, the information just comes through them, and they're the vessel. So in that vein, I would say, go online or go to your local library and ask. Show me where information about the shamanism that would be relevant to me, that would be interesting to me is. And just make a little, treasure hunt out of it, and follow whatever your intuition tells you about where that is, So maybe you'll be online and doing Google searches, or maybe you'll be in the library, or maybe you'll be in the old bookstore and, something will come along, or maybe you'll run into somebody on the street. But if you're truly interested, ask. It's a direct revelation practice, and you'll start getting some guidance.
Yep. That expression, asking you shall receive, really works.
That's it. It totally does. Only if you ask, right?
Yes, only if you ask, right?
That's right. Gotta ask.
What a gift this conversation has been, Julie. I'm so grateful to you for joining us today. If people want to find out more about your work, how can they locate you?
So they can check out my website. It's www.julieoperkins.com.
Wonderful. And we'll add links to everything we talked about today in the show notes. I once again want to thank my fascinating guest, Julio, and love this primer on shamanism. And if this is something that speaks to you, ask a question, see where it leads you. Thanks everyone for tuning in today to another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities. I'm Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you like this podcast, be sure to like, comment, and share with your friends. Thanks everyone. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.